Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Mondays with Mundy. That's me, Jim Mundy, the historian for the Union League Legacy Foundation, and I do hope you're coming back. All right, I hope these are interesting things. So if you're watching this video, it was released on Monday, December the 7th, and on December the 8th, 150 years ago in 1870, the League held its first art reception, and it was a big success. So we're going to spend today's episode talking about the reception itself and some of the individuals involved with it, the artists, and what it meant for Philadelphia. And of course, the League was right in the center of it. So let's take a look. So that means I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint. So let me do that right now. Okay. I need to, come on, let's go. There we go. We do that. We do that. And we do that. And whoops-a-daisy. We go there. So, all right, here we go. Self-explanatory, right? Okay, let's see what we got. All right, we're going to go back to this slide. Now, when Cleghorn was born in 1817, at the beginning of the 19th century, Philadelphia was known as the Athens of America. It was the country's largest city. It was the center of politics, although Washington had, the capital moved to Washington, but Philadelphia was still very much a political city. It was the city of culture, the city of science, of medicine, education, and eventually industry. And Cleghorn was born right in the middle of this. And most importantly, perhaps, was Philadelphia the center of the art community in the country. In 1805, Charles Willson Peale, the famous artist and progenitor of 16 children, most of whom became artists themselves. So Peale creates the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, which to this day is the first and the oldest academy in the country for the teaching of art. And it's also an art museum at the same time, obviously. So Cleghorn was born into this great period of cultural livelihood in Philadelphia. And his father, John W. Cleghorn, was an auctioneer and commission merchant in a large auction house in Philadelphia. He was one of the partners in it. And when James was 14 years old, so that would be 1831, he went to work for his father's firm as a clerk. And he would stay there for the rest of his career, basically. So in 1836, some of the older partners had left the firm, one had died, and John Cleghorn, with another partner, John B. Myers, would form the firm of Myers and Cleghorn Auctioneers. And at that, James was set for the rest of his life. Now, in 1840, James was made a partner in the firm, and it was also that year that he began collecting art. Not only collecting art, but he had a portrait done of himself at the same time. So there is young James on the right-hand side, and a portrait done by Robert Street. And on the left-hand side, you see the building, Myers and Cleghorn Auction Store, as it was called, at 232 Market Street. So that was where Cleghorn would spend most of the rest of his professional career. All right. He worked there continuously, rarely left the city, and literally for those 21 years that he was a partner, he made every single accounting ledger in the ledger books, which shows you how intensely involved he was with this endeavor. But in 1840, though, at the same time, he started his art collection. And this art collection, by the time he retired in 1861, was considered the largest one in the city of Philadelphia, over 300 paintings alone in that collection. And to give you some sense of size, the League's art and sculpture collection is just about 300 paintings. So imagine walking into the Union League and every piece of art you saw in it belonged to one individual. That'd be the same thing. So pretty amazing collection. All right. So what else? Let's see. 1853. Cleghorn, obviously involved with the arts now. And this is a city that was having a hard time with art itself anymore, because at this point, most artists who wanted to make a living anyway were migrating to New York. New York had already overtaken Philadelphia as the center of commerce in the country, and it was soon taking over as the center of the art world in the country as well. In 1848, Thomas Sully, Philadelphia's arguably greatest artist in the 19th century, called Philadelphia a sad place to be for artists. Right? It just wasn't the place to make a living. So you can see how things had changed. Yet Sully stuck it out, and glad he did. 1853, the Pennsylvania Academy held an exhibit, and this is when it was located on Chestnut Street, just east of Broad. And in that exhibit, there were 100 artists, and yet only 30 were Philadelphians. You can see how Philadelphia artists had started to decline, things like that. But however, though, in 1853, though, Clyghorn himself became one of the original incorporators for what would be called the Philadelphia School of Design for Women. So here is the first school of its kind in the country that was going to teach women artists to be artists and sculptors. And Clyghorn was right in the thick of it, which tells us a little something about his politics, perhaps, at the same time, right? So at the same time that he's involved with the incorporation of the Philadelphia School of Design for Women, he's also becoming involved with the Pennsylvania Academy at the same time and would go on its board. The Civil War would interrupt, 1861 to 1865. However, though, after the war was over, Clyghorn, who would become a founding member of the Union League, along with his father and John V. Myers, both. So all three of them were founding members of the League. And in 1872, Clyghorn became president of the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, and he would remain in that position until he died in 1884. Now, in 1877, Clyghorn sold his art collection after giving some of it away, some of which he gave to the Union League, very gratefully. And he did that so he could concentrate on collecting prints, lithographs, chromolithographs, mesotints especially. And by the time he died in 1884, it was thought that he had the largest collection in the country of over 50,000 pieces. Pretty amazing stuff. So Clyghorn is a very important person in the Philadelphia art world. And let's see what else we can see about Clyghorn. And I apologize for the unfocused view here, but it's the best I could do, or best I could find. This is his print gallery at his house, which was 222 West Logan Square. You can imagine that. All right, this can just give you some idea where it was. And of course, there's a natural skylight above it. And you can see how the walls are just jammed with prints, as are other places. And this, I'm really sorry, I did my best to get a better image of this, but there's a ticket of admission to view Clyghorn's art collection. So you can imagine how popular and how famous it must have been, but how good it must have been at the same time. So let's see what it says. Mr. To view collection of paintings on Tuesdays of fair weather. I like that a lot. Okay, hours 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. He's got it down. James L. Clyghorn, 222 West Logan Square. So it must have, so you know, maybe this is where Barnes got the idea, who knows, but it must have been an amazing collection for Clyghorn to have timed entrance into his house to see his art collection. So where does that lead us? It leads us to this. The catalog of the first art reception of the Union League of Philadelphia during the evenings of December 8th, 9th, and 10th of 1870. If you look on the right-hand side, very simple. Number, title, artist, and owner. So if you look at the list of artists, you'll see that these are artists who are fairly still unknown in Philadelphia art circles. None of the big names that we've come to recognize over the years. However, though, you will see that there are a number of women artists, which I think is pretty neat. So we have Mary Wyman, right, number 7, Ida Wall, number 8, who was the daughter of Samuel Bell Wall, who we will meet in a few minutes in this story. And then going further down, number 33, Mary Smith, who was the daughter of Russell Smith, who has some paintings in this exhibit itself. You can see him up above at number 18, and that makes her the brother of Xanthus Russell Smith, who has a number of pieces in the League's collection right now. So, and as we go to page 2, we begin to find more recognizable names. So at the very top, Thomas Moran, and then going down, Peter Moran, his younger brother, and then we have Thomas Trevor Fowler, who we have in the League's collection. Edward Moran was actually, let's see, Edward was the oldest. He was born in 1827. So Edward Moran had more paintings in this exhibit than anybody else. So from Moran, we go to Edmund Darch Lewis, who was also in the League's collection. Russell Smith, we mentioned before. Joseph John is in the League's collection. Augustus Goodyear Heaton. Edward Dalton Marchant, both League members. All right, Dana Ridgway Knight. Peter Frederick Rothermel. George C. Landon, the son of James Reed Landon, who was also a member of the League, as was George himself. And regretfully, we don't have any paintings of George in the collection. And on page 3, at the top, George C. Landon again, Augustus Goodyear Heaton again. James Reed Landon, Thomas Moran, Samuel Bell Wall. And look at that Samuel Bell Wall specifically. This is his general grant from life. Okay? And we'll get there. So stay tuned. All right? But even more importantly, look below at the committee. Left-hand side, Peter Frederick Rothermel, James Reed Landon, Daniel Ridgway Knight, Samuel Bell Wall, Thomas Moran, and Joseph Alexis Bailey, who was the only sculptor on the committee itself. Rothermel was a founding member of the League. He joined early in January of 1863. Landon also joined in 1863, but at the end of January. Daniel Ridgway Knight in 1870. Samuel Bell Wall never joined, unfortunately, nor did Thomas Moran or Bailey, but there's Augustus Goodyear Heaton, who was the secretary of this reception committee, and he did join the League in January of 1863. On the right-hand side, we have the members listed. James L. Claghorn right at the top, and it's not even alphabetical at that point, all right? He gets top billing, and there's a good reason for that, as we've just learned, I hope. Samuel Caldwell, Edward C. Knight, and John Rice, all members and all art collectors in their own right, and of course the incomparable George H. Boker, one of the two founders of the League itself. So quite a powerful committee, quite a powerful list of both artists and collectors at the same time. So let's take a look at what's going to happen next. Now I'll tell you a little bit. All right, I spent hours trying to find images of any of the paintings that were in this exhibit. Unfortunately, I struck out. Even the almighty God, Google, couldn't help me with that. So we'll look at some of the artists who are either on the committee or in the exhibit itself, and we'll show you examples of their work that are either in the League's collection or very famous pieces that made them famous artists. So here goes. Now, the exhibit itself. All right. This is the League as it looked in 1870, so it's just what we call today the Broad Street building, and only two of the floors, the first floor, which is above street level, and the second floor, have the spaces where the paintings could be hung for the exhibit itself. So let's take a look at what the inside looks like. And this is the main hallway. So that the light coming in at the far end is the Broad Street entrance. We're standing at the end of the hall, on the west side of the hall, and you can see how there are paintings on the wall. So to give you some idea of the ability of the League paintings here. Now this photograph is from 1887, as are the next two. They're the earliest photographs we have that show the house and what it might have looked like as an art reception space. And that's the hallway. This is the front parlor. So when you walk in the front door and you turn to the right, there was the parlor on the right-hand side. But again, you can see with these tall, 18-foot ceilings, you have lots of wall space to hang paintings, and the League took advantage of that. And then on the second floor, at the west end of the floor, would have been the banquet room, which is still there to this day. And again, you can see the amount of wall space available to hang paintings for this exhibit, because in an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer on December the 9th, it mentioned that every passage and parlor in the building was used to hang paintings. So and that's what they did. And by the way, looking at this photograph, the two paintings we see on the right-hand side, both done by the French artist Emile Menard, both of those paintings are still in the collection today and hanging in the smoking room. So let's get on. And to show you some idea of what it might have looked like, this is a photograph from the 1864 Great Central Fair on Lincoln Square. And this is the art department, which was the largest of the departments at the fair itself. And you can see how you could cram paintings into every square inch of space on the wall. So that gives you some idea of what this exhibit might have looked like for all of us, because we have no photographs of it, regretfully. All right. So the first of the artists we're going to look at is Peter Frederick Rothermel. He was born in 1817, just like James Claghorn, only he was born in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania. And German farmers, that's what Germans did in central Pennsylvania, all right, in the 19th century. And gratefully they did, because they made Pennsylvania the breadbasket of America at that point in time. Rothermel wasn't meant to be on a farm. He found his way to Philadelphia, where he found work as a sign painter. And while he was doing that, he enrolled at the Pennsylvania Academy and became a student of Bass Otis, one of the early and greatest teachers at the Academy in the 19th century. Rothermel would eventually become a teacher at the Academy itself between 1847 and 1855. And for the next 5 years after that, he traveled in Europe, came back to Philadelphia in 1860 in time for the Civil War. Became a founding member of the Union League in January of 1863. And it stayed in Philadelphia until he died in 1895, and buried at the Woodlands in West Philadelphia. And so here's the painting that we have in the League's collection, done by Peter Frederick Rothermel, a wonderful history painting. And this is called The Reading of the Declaration of Independence. So you recognize Independence Hall on the left-hand side. Left-hand corner, you'll notice Ben Franklin, ubiquitous Benjamin Franklin. And on the tower in the center, on the right-hand side, you see Colonel John Nixon reading that great draft of the Declaration of Independence itself. It's a phenomenal painting, and I would encourage anybody to come into the league and take a look at it. Actually, it's in an exhibit, so it's open to the public as well. Here we have Augustus Goodyear Heaton, born in Philadelphia, 1844. Geez, what did Heaton do? Heaton went to art school, not surprisingly, and that was the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, where he became a student of Peter Frederick Rothermel himself. Heaton would also study in Paris at l'École des Beaux-Arts, which was known as the premier school in the world at that point for not only artists but architects as well. Heaton would also spend some time in Italy. Came back to Philadelphia and painted. He became known as a portrait artist primarily, although he did some history paintings, and we'll see one shortly. But in the latter half of his life, though, he also became a numismatist. That is, he studied coins and medallions and became the president of the American Numismatic Association. So quite a varied life. Also buried in Philadelphia, and also buried at the Woodland. I know he's buried at Laurel Hill. Forgive me for that. So anyway, so this is the painting. This is the Heaton painting in the League's collection called George Washington presenting Governor Dinwiddie's letter to the Chevalier de Lagradot et Frontenac. So this is when Governor Dinwiddie was the governor of Virginia. This is when Western Pennsylvania was being disputed, or the possession of it was being disputed between a number of different people, including the English, the Virginians, the French, and everybody. So that is the Chevalier sitting at the table in his beautiful blue uniform, and there you have George Washington dressed as a British soldier. And so I think it's one of the few times you'll ever see him wearing red. So great painting, wonderful history painting, and this was this actually happened. And this painting is now on view at the golf club at Torresdale, so the Unilees Golf Club in Northeast Philadelphia, where it may be seen today. Next, we have Thomas Moran. Now, Moran never joined the Union League. Neither did his two brothers, unfortunately, even though they were from Philadelphia. Although born in England, parents came to Philadelphia to work in the textile trade. And all three brothers would become artists in their own right. Thomas was the middle one, 1837, as you can see. And like everybody else, he studied art. Only he studied under a marine artist, a landscape as well, named James Hamilton, who was very active in Philadelphia in the mid-19th century. Moran was still in Philadelphia working. I mean, he originally worked as a wood engraver in Philadelphia, and I guess he came across a book of paintings that included some by J.M.W. Turner, the great 19th century English artist. And apparently that is what stoked his imagination to become an artist himself. So after studying at Moran, he stayed in Philadelphia, and he's still in Philadelphia in 1870 become part of the committee for this art reception. But in 1871, fate would intervene, and League member Jay Cook would help subsidize a geographical expedition to the Yellowstone River region in Wyoming. And he suggested that Thomas Moran be part of that expedition because there was no better artist in the country to do that. And that set Moran's fate, because after that he would become one of the country's greatest landscape artists, especially in regards to the West. And so here's the first painting he did as a result of that expedition. And this is the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone River. And it is just magnificent. And you can see why his paintings became so popular. And he became such a famous artist as well. Now, this is in the possession of the Interior Department in Washington, D.C., because they bought it in 1872. So, quite a painting. And then we have Edward Moran, who was the most exhibited artist at this reception in 1870. Edward was older by 10 years, studied art in Philadelphia, also under James Hamilton, but also under Paul Weber, who was a landscape artist in Philadelphia. And you will see many pieces of his work at the Pennsylvania Academy, for instance. Edward, though, would become known as a marine artist, and for good reason, because he was spectacular at it, and here's why. This is a painting in the League's collection called Marine, painted in 1872. It shows an American ship in the center there. You can see by the flag at the rear of the ship, which means that was the country of origin, going off the mast. And this was a ship that was chartered by Philadelphians and Pennsylvanians to send supplies to Paris during the Franco-Prussian War to help the French population, which was in need of help, shall we say. So And this painting can also be seen at the lake, and it's a shame this reproduction doesn't really quite do it justice to the brightness of the sky, especially. It's a phenomenal painting. So here we have the last one that we're going to look at, and this is the only painting that I could find an image of that was actually in this art reception in 1870. So it's Ulysses S. Grant by Samuel Bellaw, as we know, from life, which makes it incredibly important. And this painting is still in the League's collection and can be seen in the banquet room, as a matter of fact. Now, Samuel Bellaw was from New Wilmington, Pennsylvania, which was it's barely a few miles east of the border with Ohio, so it's a very, very western part of Pennsylvania. He very little is known about him, but he apparently studied in Pittsburgh under J.R. Smith, went to Canada with his brother, and Samuel's brother, where they studied art in Toronto, and from there, Bellaw would go to Italy and create living panoramas and things like that, and would come back to Philadelphia because Philadelphia was still the place to be. And he became known for his portraits as well, and you can see why. So Samuel Bellaw created this wonderful portrait of Ulysses S. Grant, and again, this image doesn't do it justice. I really want to see it in person if you ever can. So you can see the kind of artists that were represented in this exhibit and why this reception was so important in the Philadelphia Art World, because there's nobody else who's doing this at this time, right? Okay. All right. So here we go. This was an article from the Philadelphia Inquirer of December the 13th, and we'll read it together. The art reception just passed gave evidence of how much the League may do for the cultivation of the elegant arts and for the credit and best interest of our beloved city. So the League is not just that patriotic social society it had been. It was organized in 1862. It is a civic institution that wants to be part of the civic life of Philadelphia itself. It is the intention of the board of directors to permit no opportunity to pass that may add to the renown of Philadelphia and spread her reputation among her sister cities. So there you go. So the League is going to lead the charge, right? Which is pretty darn good. And it's good for the League, and it was good for Philadelphia, and it was good for the art world. So there you have it, folks. I hope that was fun. I probably crammed too much in there, but what the heck? You can't have too much information. So we're going to end the slideshow on this one because it wasn't the last art reception. There were to be two more, both of them in 1871, one in February, one in April. And this is a admission ticket for the one in April, which was solely an exhibit on prints engraved in photographs, primarily from Clyde-Corn's collection. So we'll get to that at some future time. But I thought you might enjoy seeing this. So there you go. That's it. That's the end of the show, folks. I hope you enjoyed all that. A lot of information, as I said, but thanks for bearing with us. So there you have it. So thanks again, and thank you to the Legacy Foundation for sponsoring these videos, these programs. I hope you're enjoying them. I hope everybody else is. And stay tuned for next week. All right, next Monday. We'll see you then. So everybody stay safe, stay well, and coming up, happy holidays. Thanks. Goodbye.